You're driving. The road is familiar, the music is on, your hands move without instruction, and then, somewhere between 1 mile and the next, you arrive, not at your destination, at a different kind of attention. The internal conversation stops. The list of things you haven't done goes quiet. The small, persistent voice that evaluates and second-guesses and worries about how you appear simply pauses. You are no longer thinking about driving. You are driving. Or perhaps it happens when you're writing, and the words come faster than the thinking, when the sentence you needed appears before you consciously chose it, or playing music, when your hands know the next note before your mind has named it, or running, or climbing, or building something with your hands, or solving a problem that has consumed you for hours. Something shifts. The friction disappears. Time does something strange. And you become, for a brief and extraordinary moment, exactly what you are doing. Where does your mind go when time disappears? Almost every human being alive has experienced this state. Athletes describe it as being in the zone. Surgeons describe it as a moment when the operation simply flows. Programmers describe hours that feel like minutes, code appearing as if written by someone slightly better than themselves. Musicians describe performances where the instrument became an extension of thought, where music stopped being played and began being lived. What all these experiences share is something that resists easy description. Not happiness exactly, not relaxation, not pleasure in the ordinary sense, something closer to completeness. A rare alignment between what the mind can do and what it is being asked to do, where the effort and the result feel like the same thing. This state has a name, and the story of how science discovered it begins with a Hungarian-American psychologist who spent 30 years asking a deceptively simple question: what makes life worth living? Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, whose name, he once said, is pronounced roughly like me high, cheeks sent me, began his research not with a theory but with a curiosity about joy. He had grown up in the aftermath of World War II, watching adults around him struggle to find meaning in a world that had just shown them its capacity for devastation. Most people, he noticed, looked for happiness in comfort, in security, in avoiding difficulty. But some people seemed to find something different, something richer. He became fascinated by artists, by chess players, surgeons, rock climbers, anyone who devoted themselves to something difficult enough to require complete absorption. He began interviewing them, thousands of them, across cultures, professions, and decades, and the pattern that emerged was something almost nobody had predicted. People were not happiest when they were relaxing. They were not happiest when they were comfortable. They were happiest when they were completely absorbed in something difficult. When skill and challenge met at exactly the right level, not so easy the mind wandered, not so hard it panicked, something happened. The ordinary sense of self receded, time altered, and people described the experience consistently and across every culture he studied as the best moments of their lives. Csikszentmihalyi named this state flow. When you enter flow, your brain does something extraordinary, something that, on first hearing, sounds almost paradoxical. The regions of the brain most associated with self-monitoring, the networks that produce the internal commentary, the self-evaluation, the constant background narration of who you are and what others think of you, become quieter, not silent, but significantly less active than they are during ordinary waking life. Neuroscientists call this transient hypofrontality. Transient because it is temporary, hypo meaning reduced. Frontality, referring to the prefrontal cortex, the region most involved in self-monitoring, long-term planning, and the construction of a conscious sense of self. In flow, this region partially steps back. And what happens when the self-monitoring system quiets down is something remarkable. The brain's resources, attention, processing capacity, the neural bandwidth that is usually divided between the task and the commentary about the task become available to the task alone. The performance improves not because effort increases, but because the friction of self-consciousness decreases. The best version of you appears the moment you stop watching yourself. Alongside the quieting of self-monitoring, flow is associated with a distinctive neurochemical signature. During flow states, research suggests that the brain releases a combination of neurochemicals rarely experienced together. Dopamine, which focuses attention and generates the drive to continue. Norepinephrine, which sharpens alertness and increases information processing speed. Anandamide, which enhances lateral thinking, the ability to connect distant ideas across unusual associations. Endorphins, which reduce the perception of effort and pain. And serotonin, which contributes to a sense of well-being and connection. This neurochemical combination is not under ordinary circumstances available on demand. It assembles, the evidence suggests, when a specific set of conditions is met, when the challenge is real enough to demand full attention, when the skill is sufficient to meet the challenge without being crushed by it, when the goal is clear and the feedback is immediate, when the environment permits sustained, uninterrupted engagement. In those conditions, the brain appears to recognize that something important is happening, and it responds accordingly. But what happens to time? The distortion of time perception during flow is one of its most consistently reported features, and one of the most fascinating from a neuroscientific perspective. To understand it, it helps to remember something from an earlier episode in this series. Your brain doesn't experience time directly. It constructs time, estimates it, infers it, calculates it from the density and rhythm of incoming information and the predictions it continuously generates about what will happen next. When you are bored, your brain is processing very little new information. The clock on the wall seems to move slowly because your brain, with nothing much to occupy it, is checking it frequently. When you are fully absorbed, the opposite happens. Attention narrows to the present action with extraordinary precision. New information arrives constantly, predictions are made and immediately tested. The brain is fully occupied. And in that state of complete present moment absorption, the ordinary tracking of time, the casual background monitoring of how many minutes have passed, simply gets deprioritized. Hours can pass in what feels like moments, not because time moved differently, because the part of the brain that normally monitors time had something more important to do. When attention becomes complete, time becomes irrelevant. Here is something that surprises most people when they first encounter the neuroscience of flow. Flow does not feel the way happiness feels, at least not during. During flow, what you typically feel is something closer to intensity, focus, effort. The challenge is real, the demands are high, there is nothing particularly pleasant about it in the moment. The pleasure comes afterward, after the session ends, after the performance concludes, after the problem is solved. In the reflection that follows, a deep and specific satisfaction arrives, distinct from the satisfaction of having eaten well or rested or been entertained, the satisfaction of having extended the limit of what you could do, of having been, for some period of time, operating at the very edge of your current ability. This matters for anyone trying to understand how to live well. The activities that produce the most lasting well-being are rarely the ones that feel easiest in the moment. They are the ones that ask the most of us and deliver the most of us in return. Flow is not an escape from consciousness. It is consciousness working exactly as it was designed to work. So can flow be entered deliberately? The honest answer from neuroscience is, to some extent, yes. and to some extent, the harder you try to force it, the more reliably it escapes you. What the research supports is a set of conditions that make flow significantly more likely. The first is challenge-skill balance. The challenge you face should be slightly beyond your current comfortable ability, but not so far beyond it that the brain shifts from focused engagement into the anxiety of being genuinely overwhelmed. This edge, the territory just past comfort, is where flow most naturally lives. The second is clear intention. Flow requires knowing what you are doing and why. Ambiguity fragments attention, clarity focuses it. Before sitting down to work, knowing precisely what the next action is, not in general terms but specifically, removes the cognitive cost of deciding and redirects that energy toward doing. The third is the elimination of competing demands. The brain cannot enter deep single-pointed attention while simultaneously monitoring notifications, anticipating interruptions, or holding unresolved decisions in working memory. Flow requires an environment that permits the brain to commit fully to one thing. The fourth, and perhaps least obvious, is recovery. Flow is a high-intensity neurological state. The brain that is chronically fatigued, from poor sleep, relentless stimulation, persistent stress, cannot generate the neurochemical combination that flow requires. Rest is not the opposite of peak performance. It is the biological precondition for it. Perhaps greatness is not made by thinking more carefully. Perhaps it is made by disappearing more completely into what matters. Return one final time to the ceiling in Rome. 4 years. Michelangelo spent 4 years lying on his back, painting a story across 500 square meters of ceiling. We have no record of what he felt during those hours, but we have the ceiling. And anyone who has stood beneath it and looked up knows that what is there was not made by someone who was thinking about what others would say. It was made by someone who disappeared into the work. The gap between the fingers, but that small, sacred, charged space, is perhaps not only the gap between matter and consciousness. Perhaps it is also the gap between the self that watches and the self that creates, between the mind that monitors and the mind that flows. Csikszentmihalyi once wrote that the best moments of our lives are not passive, receptive, relaxing times. The best moments usually occur when a person's body or mind is stretched to its limits in a voluntary effort to accomplish something difficult and worthwhile. The gap is still there, between who you are now and what you are capable of becoming. Flow is not a shortcut across it. It is what crossing it feels like. Every neuron remembers. Every thought changes you. Every choice rewrites you. The gap is still there. The spark is still crossing. So become